My daughter pushed me down the stairs and said, "Sign the will, Mom, or this is just the beginning." I felt my bones break. She gave me 3 days, sign over everything. 3 days later, someone walked into that office, but not the person she was expecting. Her face went pale when they appeared. I'm truly grateful you're here with me today. Before we continue, take a moment to leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I always enjoy seeing where everyone is listening from. Just a quick note before we go on this story includes some fictional elements added for storytelling and educational purposes. Any resemblance to real names or situations is purely coincidental. I want you to understand something right now before I tell you the rest. I taught elementary school for 40 years. I was a good mother. No, I was a great mother. And on August 15th at 7 o'clock on a Saturday evening, my only daughter shoved me backward at the top of my stairs, and I fell. The pain hit before the fear did. A white-hot stab through my left hip as my body slammed into the landing halfway down. My ankle twisted beneath me with a sickening crunch. For a moment, I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but lie there staring up at the ceiling of my Pearl District townhouse, wondering if this was how it ended. Then I heard her voice. "You have 3 days, Mom." I turned my head slowly because everything hurt, and there she was. Victoria, my daughter, standing at the top of the stairs in her expensive silk blouse and designer heels, looking down at me the way you'd look at a piece of furniture you were considering throwing away. Her face wasn't flushed. Her hands weren't shaking. She wasn't crying or apologizing or running down to help me. She was just cold, calm, like she'd been planning this. 3 days, she repeated, her voice steady. "Sign it back to me, or this is just the beginning." I wanted to say something, wanted to scream, to curse, to ask her how did it come to this? How did the little girl I'd raised, the daughter I'd sacrificed everything for, become someone who could look at me on the floor and feel nothing? But I couldn't get the words out. The pain was too much, and the shock, God, the shock of it, was worse than the fall itself. That's when I heard the scream. Catherine. Oh my God, Catherine. My neighbor must have heard the crash through our shared wall. I heard her pounding on my front door, shouting my name, and then the sound of her voice on the phone, frantic, breathless. "I need an ambulance now. My neighbor's been hurt." Victoria's eyes flickered toward the door. For just a second, I saw something in her face. Not regret, not guilt, fear. Fear of getting caught. She turned and walked down the stairs, stepping carefully around me like I was an obstacle, and slipped out the back door before anyone could see her. She didn't look back. Not once. The sirens came fast. Portland's emergency response is good. Within minutes, there were paramedics in my living room asking me questions I couldn't answer, loading me onto a stretcher with hands that were gentle but impersonal. As they carried me out, I caught a glimpse of my neighbor standing in her doorway, pale and shaking. She mouthed something to me. "Are you okay?" And I wanted to tell her no. I wanted to tell her that my daughter had just tried to, well, I'll get to that. Because here's the thing, this didn't start on August 15th. This didn't start with a push or a will or a threat. This started 30 years ago on the day my husband died and left me alone with a 5-year-old daughter and a choice. I chose wrong. I chose to give her everything. I chose to sacrifice, to spoil, to say yes when I should have said no. I chose to believe that love meant never letting her struggle, never letting her want, never letting her learn that the world doesn't owe you anything. I spent 3 decades building a monster, 1 BMW and 1 private school tuition payment at a time. And on that Saturday evening in August, my monster finally turned on me. But to understand why my own daughter wanted me gone, why she stood over me with those cold eyes and that colder voice, you need to know the whole story. So let me take you back to the beginning, back to the 30 years that led to this moment. The inside of an ambulance smells like disinfectant and fear. I'd never been in one before. 62 years old, and this was my first time lying on a stretcher with an oxygen mask pressed to my face. The paramedic kept asking me questions I could barely process. "Can you tell me your name?" "Catherine. Catherine Hayes." "What happened?" I opened my mouth, but the words stuck. My daughter pushed me down the stairs. "How do you say that out loud?" "I fell," I whispered instead. The ride to OHSU hospital felt endless. Every bump sent fresh waves of pain through my left hip and ankle. I kept my eyes closed and tried to breathe, but all I could see was Victoria's face, cold, calculated, as she stepped over me and walked away. 3 days, she'd said. I didn't know if I'd survive 3 hours. At the emergency room, everything became a blur of fluorescent lights and urgent voices. X-rays, scans, a doctor with silver hair peering at a monitor. "Mrs. Hayes," he said, calm and professional, "you're lucky. No fractures. Severe contusion to your left hip, a deep bone bruise, and a grade 2 ankle sprain. Significant tissue damage. We'll need to keep you here for observation. 4 to 5 days. Lucky." That was the word he used. I wanted to laugh or scream. Instead, I just nodded and let them give me something for the pain. The medication made everything soft around the edges, but it didn't stop my mind from racing. I taught children to be kind for 40 years. That's what I kept thinking as I lay there staring at ceiling tiles. I spent 4 decades teaching second graders to share, to use their words to treat each other with respect. How did I raise a daughter who could do this to me? The answer, of course, was that I hadn't just raised her. I'd spoiled her, enabled her, given her everything, and convinced myself it was love. Around 9:30, there was a knock on my door. "Catherine." I turned my head and saw Mrs. Patricia Sullivan standing in the doorway. Pat had lived next door to me for almost 15 years, the kind of neighbor everyone hopes for. Quiet, respectful, always willing to water your plants. She looked pale, shaken. "Oh, honey," she said, rushing to my bedside. "I heard the whole thing through the wall. I called 911 and prayed they'd get there in time. What happened?" I should have lied, should have said I tripped, but I was so tired. Tired of pretending, tired of protecting Victoria, my daughter. I said, my voice barely a whisper. "My only daughter. She's the one who pushed me." Pat's hand flew to her mouth. "Catherine," she breathed, "we need to call the police." "No," the word came out sharp. "Not yet. But I need time to think, Pat." She looked like she wanted to argue, but something in my face stopped her. She squeezed my hand instead, her grip warm and steady. "Okay," she said softly, "but I'm not leaving you alone in this. Whatever you need." I nodded, blinking back tears. After Pat left, I lay there in the dark, listening to the beeping of machines and distant sounds of the hospital at night. I thought about my life-retired elementary school teacher 3 years out of the classroom after 40 years teaching Portland public schools. I'd spent my career shaping young minds, teaching empathy and kindness. And somehow I'd failed at teaching my own child the most basic lesson of all other people matter. The doctor had said 5 days. Victoria had given me 3. And somewhere between those 2 numbers, I realized something. If I didn't act, if I didn't come up with a plan, the next time my daughter came for me, I might not survive. But that plan, the one I knew I needed to survive, required me to understand something first. I had to go back to the moment when everything changed, back to the day I made the choice that shaped the next 30 years, back to the day David died. It was a Tuesday in April, 30 years ago. I was 32, teaching second grade at elementary, and my husband was 35, too young for a heart attack, too healthy for his heart to just stop. But it did. One moment, David was kissing me goodbye in our kitchen. The next, I was getting a phone call from a stranger telling me to come to the hospital. By the time I got there, he was gone. I don't remember much about the funeral. I remember Victoria, just 5 years old, in a black dress from Target, holding my hand and asking when Daddy was coming home. I remember lying to her, telling her Daddy was in heaven now watching over us. I remember thinking, how am I supposed to do this alone? The life insurance check came 6 weeks later, $200,000. It felt obscene, like someone had decided my husband's life was worth exactly that much and not a penny more. But it was also a lifeline. I could have used it wisely, paid off the mortgage, invested it. My mother, Eleanor, 57 at the time and still sharp, told me to be smart. "Don't just spend it on the child, Catherine," she warned. "Think about your future too." But I didn't listen. I looked at my daughter, my beautiful little girl with David's eyes and my stubborn chin, and I made a decision. I will give her everything I never had. I grew up poor. Not starving, but poor enough that I wore hand-me-downs and ate free lunch at school. I worked my way through community college, then state university, then got my teaching credential while waiting tables at night. I survived, I clawed my way up. And I decided right there with that check in my hand that Victoria would never have to claw. She would never struggle or want or wonder if there was enough. She would have everything. So I got a second job, tutoring 3 evenings a week and Saturday mornings. I lived frugally, same car, same clothes, same tiny house. I packed Victoria's lunches. I cut my own hair. I said no to dinners out, to vacations, to anything unnecessary. But for Victoria, I said yes. Piano lessons, dance classes, summer camp, new clothes every school year, not hand-me-downs, birthday parties with bounce houses and bakery cakes, everything. I told myself I was being a good mother. I told myself this was love, sacrifice, and selflessness, putting your child first. I told myself David would have wanted this. Looking back now, lying in that hospital bed with my body broken and my daughter's threats echoing in my ears, I can see the truth. I wasn't teaching Victoria resilience. I wasn't teaching her gratitude or empathy or the value of hard work. I was teaching her that the world revolved around her, that she deserved everything simply because she existed, that other people, even her own mother, were there to serve her needs. I was teaching her entitlement, and by the time I realized what I'd done, it was too late. The child who'd clung to my hand at her father's funeral, who'd cried herself to sleep in my arms, that child was gone. In her place was a woman who looked at me the way you'd look at an obstacle, a problem to solve, a resource to extract. I thought I was building a better life for my daughter. What I was actually building was a monster. And 30 years later, that monster pushed me down the stairs. The monster didn't appear overnight. I built her piece by piece, gift by gift, over 25 years. It started small. Victoria was 6 when she asked why we couldn't go to Disneyland like her classmates. I worked double tutoring shifts that summer and took her for a week. She smiled in every photo. At 8, she wanted dance lessons. Private lessons, not the group classes, at the rec center. I canceled my gym membership and skipped lunches to pay for them. At 10, she needed a new laptop for school. Not the basic model, the one with the bigger screen, the faster processor. I drove my 15-year-old Honda for 3 more years so she could have it. I told myself I was giving her opportunities I never had. I told myself I was being a good mother. But the gifts kept getting bigger, and her demands kept getting louder. On her 16th birthday, Victoria didn't ask for a car. She demanded one. Not just any car, a BMW. "Everyone at school has one, Mom," she said, as if that explained everything. "I can't show up in your car. It's embarrassing." I couldn't afford a new one, but I found a pre-owned 2004 model, silver pristine, $28,000. I spent every penny of what was left from David's life insurance, the money I'd been saving for emergencies, for retirement, for me. I took on extra tutoring shifts for 2 years, evenings, weekends, summers, just to cover the insurance and maintenance. When I handed her the keys, she smiled. "Thanks, Mom," she said. Then she drove away to show her friends. I stood in the driveway in my 10-year-old winter coat, watching her taillights disappear, and told myself it was worth it. It wasn't. At 18, Victoria went to college. Not the state school with the scholarship offer, not the community college where I taught part-time. UCLA, private university, out of state. "I deserve the best education, Mom," she said. "You want me to succeed, don't you?" 4 years of tuition room board books, then 2 more years for an MBA. I emptied my retirement accounts. I took out loans. I sold the few pieces of jewelry David had given me. $180,000. She graduated with honors, got a law degree, and moved back to Portland with a job at a mid-tier firm. I was proud. I thought it was over, the sacrifices, the constant giving. I thought she'd finally be independent. I was wrong. At 27, Victoria got engaged to Daniel Reeves. He was charming, polished, 30 years old with an MBA and a tech consulting startup that was about to take off. It never did. But Victoria didn't care. She wanted a wedding. Not a small ceremony, not a courthouse signing. A wedding. Waterfall Ranch Vineyard just outside Portland. 200 guests. String quartet. 5-tier cake. Designer dress. $85,000. Daniel's parents contributed $20,000. I paid the rest, $42,500, with the last of David's life insurance money and what remained in my savings. I wore a dress I'd bought at Target 5 years earlier. Victoria looked like a princess. "This is the happiest day of my life, Mom," she whispered as I adjusted her veil. "Thank you for making it perfect." I hugged her and told her I loved her. And I did. But standing in that vineyard watching her dance with Daniel under the string lights, I felt something I'd never felt before. Emptiness. I'd given her everything, and I had nothing left. 2 years later, Daniel's business collapsed. Debt piled up $400,000 in loans, credit cards, bad investments. Victoria's salary as a junior attorney wasn't enough, but her lifestyle didn't change. The house in West Hills, the luxury cars, the vacations. She came to me, of course. "Mom, we just need a little help, just until things turn around." I said yes again. I gave her $10,000, then another 15, then 20 more. By the time I finally said no, I drained half my retirement account. And Victoria looked at me like I was the one being unreasonable. "After everything I've done for you." I wanted to scream. After 30 years of giving you everything, but I didn't. I just smiled and said, "I'm sorry, honey. I don't have any more to give." That's when her eyes went cold. "You always have more, Mom," she said quietly. "You just don't want to give it to me." And she walked out. 3 months later, I sat in an estate lawyer's office and made a decision. I was going to leave half my estate to charity. Victoria would get the other half, $425,000. It should have been enough. It wasn't, because Victoria didn't want half. She wanted everything, and she was willing to do whatever it took to get it. She meant it, and I had no one to blame but myself. I thought the hardest part was over after Victoria graduated. I thought once she had her degree and her career, she wouldn't need me to keep opening my wallet anymore. I was wrong. 8 years ago, Victoria came home from California with a ring on her finger and a man on her arm. Daniel Reeves, 30 years old at the time, handsome in that polished corporate way. An entrepreneur with some kind of tech consulting business that sounded impressive, even though I didn't fully understand what he actually did. "We're getting married, Mom," Victoria announced. Not "I'd like you to meet someone," not "we're engaged, isn't it wonderful?" Just a flat statement like she was informing me of a business decision. I should have been happy for her. Should have asked questions, gotten to know this man who was going to be my son-in-law. Instead, I asked, "When's the wedding? What do you need?" Victoria's eyes lit up. That should have been my first warning. She wanted the wedding at a vineyard outside Portland. 200 guests and 8-piece band flowers flown in from somewhere expensive, a dress that cost more than my first car. The total came to $85,000. Daniel's parents are contributing $20,000, Victoria said, scrolling through Pinterest boards while I sat across from her at my kitchen table. "So we just need you to cover the rest." Just like $65,000 was pocket change. I wanted to say no. God, I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell her that a wedding that expensive was obscene, that she could have something beautiful and meaningful for a quarter of that cost, that maybe, just maybe she and Daniel should be paying for their own wedding. But I looked at her face at that expectation, that absolute certainty that I would say yes and I couldn't do it. So I paid $42,500 for half of my daughter's wedding. I used the last of David's insurance money and drained a significant chunk of my savings account. I told myself it was an investment in her happiness. The wedding was beautiful. I won't lie about that. Victoria looked stunning. Daniel looked proud, and everyone said it was the most elegant event they'd ever attended. I wore a dress I'd bought on sale at Nordstrom Rack and smiled until my face hurt. For the first couple of years, things seemed fine. Victoria and Daniel moved into a house in West Hills, one of Portland's wealthiest neighborhoods, and she landed a good job at a corporate law firm. They posted photos from expensive vacations, Bali, Italy, Napa Valley. I didn't ask how they afforded it all. I didn't want to know. Then about 2 years ago, Daniel's business fell apart. I never got the full story. Something about a bad investment, a contract that didn't come through clients who didn't pay. Whatever it was, it left them with $400,000 in debt. $400,000. And Victoria's lifestyle didn't change. Not one bit. Same house, same cars, same designer wardrobe. She posted photos from a weekend in Seattle like nothing was wrong. I started to wonder, where was that money coming from? I didn't want to ask that question either. Around that time, I started thinking seriously about my future. I was 62 years old, 3 years into retirement after 40 years of teaching. I'd been living frugally my whole life, and I'd managed to save $850,000, everything I had in the world. $550,000 in retirement accounts, $200,000 in savings, $100,000 in equity from my Pearl District townhouse. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough. Enough to live comfortably, maybe travel a little, help my mother Eleanor if she needed it in her old age. And I started thinking, what happens to all this when I'm gone? I didn't have a will. I'd never gotten around to making one. It felt too morbid, too final. But I was 62 and Eleanor was 87, and I realized I needed to plan. So I started researching charities, places that had meant something to me over the years. A children's education fund, a women's shelter where I'd volunteered, an animal rescue where I'd adopted my cat 15 years ago. I thought, what if I could leave something behind that mattered? What if my life could help people beyond just my daughter? It felt good. It felt right. I had no idea that decision would nearly cost me my life. The decision felt right in theory. In practice, it was terrifying. 4 months ago, back in May, I made an appointment with an estate lawyer, Robert Mitchell. Late 50s, kind eyes, an office on Southwest 5th Avenue downtown. He'd been recommended by a friend from my teaching days. "Mrs. Hayes," he said, shaking my hand, "tell me what brings you in." I sat down and folded my hands to keep them from shaking. "I want to make a will," I said, "and I think my daughter is going to hate me for it." I told Robert the essentials, about Victoria, the endless giving, the debt, the feeling that nothing would ever be enough. "I have $850,000, I said, "everything I've saved, and I want to leave half of it to charity." Robert didn't blink, just pulled out a legal pad. "Which charities?" "3 organizations, I said. "A children's education fund, a women's shelter I used to volunteer at, and an animal rescue, split evenly between them. And the other half goes to my daughter Victoria." Robert nodded. "That sounds more than fair, Mrs. Hayes." Fair. I knew Victoria wouldn't see it that way. 3 weeks later, the draft was ready. Robert gave me a copy to review at home. I left it on my desk in my home office, meant to put it away, meant to keep it private. But I forgot. And 3 days later, Victoria stopped by unannounced. I was in the kitchen when I heard her voice from the other room. "Mom, what the hell is this?" My stomach dropped. I walked into the office and found her at my desk holding the will. Her face was white, then red, then something beyond anger, something cold and dangerous. "You're leaving half your money to charity." Her voice was barely a whisper, but it felt like screaming. "Victoria, to strangers, to people you don't even know. I know the organizations," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I've supported them for years. I want to leave a legacy that—" "You owe me that money, Mother." She slammed the papers down. "I'm your only child. I'm your daughter. Everything you have should be mine." There it was. The thing I'd always known but never let myself see. Everything you have is mine. She meant it. She'd always meant it. And for the first time in 30 years, I said the word I should have said 1,000 times before. "No." Victoria stared at me like I'd slapped her. "No," I repeated stronger. "I want to leave a legacy beyond our family. I want my life to mean something more than just this." For a long moment, she said nothing, just stood there, breathing, hard hands clenched into fists. Then she turned and walked out without another word. 2 weeks of silence. No calls, no texts, nothing. I told myself it was for the best. She needed time to cool down to realize I had a right to do what I wanted with my own money. Part of me felt relief. For the first time in decades, I'd stood up to her. I'd said no, and the world hadn't ended. Maybe I thought this was the beginning of something better. Maybe she'd come back ready to have an actual conversation. Maybe we could finally build a relationship based on mutual respect instead of endless transactions. I should have known better, because 2 weeks later my phone rang. Victoria's name on the screen. Mom. Her voice was soft, sweet. The voice she'd used as a little girl when she wanted something. "I'm sorry I overreacted. I've been thinking about what you said, and you're right. Can we talk? Maybe over dinner. I want to understand." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her so badly. Every instinct I had, every lesson I'd learned from 40 years of teaching children should have told me this was manipulation. Should have told me that people don't change their core beliefs in 2 weeks. Should have told me to be careful. But I was her mother, and mothers want to believe their children can change. So I said yes. I should have been smarter than that. I drove to Victoria and Daniel's house on a Wednesday evening in early July, telling myself this was progress, that my daughter was ready for a real conversation. I should have noticed the way Daniel answered the door. Too formal, too polite. I should have noticed Victoria had set 3 places at the dining room table like a business meeting. But I didn't, because I wanted to believe. The dinner lasted 40 minutes. I barely touched my food. It wasn't a conversation. It was an intervention. Victoria and Daniel sat across from me like lawyers presenting a case. They had notes, printed documents, clearly rehearsed. Mom, Victoria began, voice calm and measured. We're worried about you. We think you might be experiencing some cognitive decline. I stared at her. What? The will, Daniel said. It's not rational. No mother in her right mind would give half her estate to strangers when her own daughter needs help. That money should stay in the family, Victoria added. What if you get sick? Need care? I felt something cold settle in my chest. I'm not confused, I said quietly. Those organizations aren't strangers. This is my money and I get to decide. Do you? Victoria leaned forward. Because it looks like these charities manipulated you with emotional appeals, and suddenly you're throwing away your daughter's inheritance. It's not your inheritance yet, I said sharper than intended. It's my money. The temperature dropped. Daniel cleared his throat. We're trying to help. Victoria can't take care of you if you give away her ability to help. Perfect circular logic, perfect manipulation. I'm not changing the will, I said. Victoria's mask slipped. Just for a second, I saw rage. Then she smiled. Okay, Mom, if that's what you want. But it wasn't okay. The calls started the next day. Morning, noon, night, sometimes twice a day. Always the same message in different variations. I'm worried about you, Mom. You should see a doctor. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me. I'll take care of you when you're old, but only if you take care of me now. 6 weeks. 6 brutal, exhausting weeks. Some days I didn't answer. She'd leave voicemails, long, sad, angry, cycling through emotions like reading from a script. Some days I tried to reason with her, tried to explain I loved her. She was still getting half this wasn't punishment. She never listened, just talked over me, redirecting every conversation to how hurt she was, how betrayed, how I was destroying our relationship. I started to feel crazy, started to doubt myself. Was I being unreasonable? Was I punishing her? But then I'd remember BMW at 16, $180,000 for college, $42,000 for her wedding. And it still wasn't enough. It would never be enough. The manipulation was relentless. Textbook emotional abuse, guilt, obligation, fear. But I had no proof. No recorded threats, no witnesses. Just phone calls that could be explained as a concerned daughter checking on her aging mother. I couldn't go to the police with feelings, couldn't explain to friends without sounding paranoid. All I had was the sick certainty that if I gave in now, I'd spend the rest of my life giving in. On August 14th, I woke to a text message. No greeting, no preamble. Just tomorrow, 7 p.m. I'm bringing the new will. You're signing it, Mom, or we're done. I stared at those words for a long time. Or we're done. Like 30 years of motherhood could be erased with a signature. Like I was only valuable if I gave her what she wanted. I didn't respond, didn't know what to say. The next evening, August 15th, I was home alone. It was just past 6 o'clock when my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting her until 7, but there she was, Victoria and Daniel, standing on my doorstep with a folder in her hands and fury in her eyes. And that's when everything fell apart. The text had said 7 p.m., but Victoria arrived at 6. I was in my living room organizing old photo albums, one of those quiet Saturday tasks you do when you're trying not to think about the storm coming. The August evening light was golden through my windows, and for a brief moment, everything felt almost normal. Then the doorbell rang. An hour early, of course she came early. I knew before I opened the door. Some part of me just knew. Victoria stood on my front step with Daniel behind her. She was holding a manila folder and her face wasn't the fake sweetness from 2 weeks ago. It was something harder, colder. We need to talk, Mom. Not tonight, Victoria. You said 7. Plans changed. Let me in. I tried to close the door. She shoved it open hard enough that I stumbled backward and walked into my house like she owned it. Daniel followed, closing the door behind them. Victoria, you can't just... I can't what? She turned on me, and I'd never seen her look like that before, like I was an enemy. Can't try to save you from the biggest mistake of your life. She slapped the folder onto my coffee table. This is the new will. 100% to me, 0 to your charities. Sign it. I looked at the folder. Didn't touch it. No. What? I said no. I'm not signing that. The silence that followed was terrifying. You're confused, Victoria said, voice dropping to something quiet and dangerous. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking perfectly clearly. I stood straighter, though my legs shook. 50% to you, 50% to charity. That's fair and that's final. Fair. Victoria laughed, but there was nothing funny in it. Fair after everything you put me through. That money exists because of what I survived. Something inside me finally broke. Not broke down. Broke free. Get out of my house. Victoria's eyes went wide, then narrow. What did you say? Get out. I thought she'd listen. Thought she'd turn around and leave. Instead, she started walking toward me. I backed up. Through the living room toward the stairs. She kept coming. You're going to sign that will, Mother. Victoria stopped. I was at the stairs, my back to them. Victoria was right in front of me, so close I could smell her perfume. Sign it, she hissed. No. Then her hands were on my shoulders, and then I was falling. The world tilted. My foot caught on the top step. I felt myself going backward, arms flailing, nothing to grab. I hit the landing halfway down. The impact drove air from my lungs, a bone-deep slam that turned everything white. My left hip took most of it, pain shooting through me unlike anything I'd felt. My ankle twisted beneath me, ligaments screaming. I lay there gasping, staring at my ceiling. Victoria stood at the top of the stairs, looking down with no emotion on her face. 3 days, Mom, she said, perfectly calm now. Sign the will or this is just the beginning. Then she turned and walked away. Daniel followed. My back door closed. That's when I heard Mrs. Sullivan. Catherine, oh God, Catherine, pounding on my front door, her voice frantic. I'm calling 911, hold on. Sirens came. Paramedics. Voices asking questions I couldn't focus on. But as they loaded me into the ambulance as the doors closed and we started moving, one thought cut through the pain with perfect clarity. I'm not letting her win. I need help, and I need a plan. Rose came to the hospital on August 17th. I hadn't asked her to come, but Rose Martinez, 65, retired family court judge, my best friend for 30 years, had a way of knowing when something was wrong. She walked into my room, took one look at my bruised face and the cane leaning against the bed and said, "Tell me everything." So I did. The will, the pressure, the dinner, the 6 weeks of calls, the stares. When I finished, Rose was silent for a long moment. Then she asked a question I hadn't expected. "Where's your mother?" I blinked. "Eleanor. She's at Riverside Senior Living. She's been there for, 18 months now." "When's the last time you saw her?" I tried to remember. "I don't know. Victoria said she had dementia, that it would be too upsetting for her to see me, that I should give her space to adjust." Rose's expression darkened. "Catherine," she said carefully, "have you spoken to Eleanor in the last 18 months? I tried calling, but the staff said she was confused, that she didn't want visitors. Victoria handles everything: medical decisions, finances, visits. Victoria has power of attorney." Yes, Eleanor signed it about 19 months ago. Victoria said it was just in case of emergencies. Rose pulled out her phone. "What's the name of the facility?" "Riverside Senior Living." "Why?" "Because I'm a retired judge and I know what elder abuse looks like." Rose left the hospital and went straight to Riverside. She called me 2 hours later. "Catherine, your mother doesn't have dementia." I gripped the phone. "What?" "I just spent an hour with her. She's sharp. She's angry. And she's been trying to reach you for 18 months. My chest tightened. "That's impossible. Victoria said..." Victoria lied. Rose's voice was cold. "There's something else. Victoria filed a temporary guardianship order with the court 19 months ago. She claimed Eleanor was at risk of financial exploitation due to cognitive decline. But Eleanor doesn't have cognitive decline. I know, that's why it's fraud. She submitted falsified medical records, probably forged a doctor's signature. The court granted the guardianship without a hearing because it was listed as emergency, temporary, and uncontested. My stomach turned. So the nursing home thought they were following the law. Exactly. They were protecting Eleanor from exploitation by isolating her on Victoria's orders. What about her money? Rose was quiet for a moment. Catherine Victoria's been withdrawing $4,000 to $5,000 a month from Eleanor's accounts for the past 18 months. I did the math, $75,000. She stole from my mother. Yes. I closed my eyes, felt the room spin. There's more, Rose said gently. Eleanor kept records, bank statements. She printed them from the computer lab at Riverside and hid them in her room. She's been waiting for someone to believe her. Why didn't she call me? She tried. The staff monitored her phone calls, said it was part of the care plan. Every time she asked to call you, they told her you were busy, traveling, enjoying your retirement. Victoria told them you needed space. I felt something crack inside me. Rage, pure cold rage. Where is she now? I asked. Still at Riverside, but not for long. I'm filing an emergency petition tomorrow to revoke the guardianship. We'll have her out by the end of the week. And Victoria, we're going to take her down Catherine, legally, thoroughly, and permanently. For the first time since I'd fallen, I felt something other than fear. Hope. Rose brought Eleanor to the hospital on August 20th. I was being discharged that morning 5 days after the fall, walking with a cane, my hip still aching but healing. When the door opened and I saw my mother standing there, 87 years old, silver hair, pinned back, eyes fierce and clear, I broke. Mom, she crossed the room and pulled me into her arms. I'm here, she whispered. I'm here and I'm so sorry. You have nothing to be sorry for, I said, my voice cracking. Victoria. I know, Eleanor pulled back her hands, gripping mine. Rose told me. That girl pushed you down the stairs. She wanted the will. She wanted everything. I know, Eleanor said again, her voice hard. She wanted mine too. We sat in the hospital room, me, Eleanor, and Rose, and my mother told me everything. 19 months ago. Eleanor began, Victoria came to my house. She said she was worried about me. Living alone at 87, managing my own finances, driving, she said it wasn't safe anymore. You're one of the sharpest people I know, I said. I told her that, but she kept pushing. She said, what if something happens to you, Grandma? What if you fall? What if someone tries to scam you? She made me feel old, fragile. Eleanor's jaw tightened. She convinced me to sign a power of attorney, just in case, she said. Only for emergencies. It wasn't for emergencies, Rose said quietly. No. Eleanor's voice turned bitter. 2 weeks later, she moved me into Riverside, said it was temporary, said my house needed repairs and I'd be safer there while the work was done. But there were no repairs. No, she sold my house 3 months later, told me the market was good and I'd use the money for better care. Did you? Eleanor shook her head. I never saw a penny. They showed me papers. Eleanor continued, her hands trembling slightly. Official papers, temporary guardianship, they said. Your granddaughter is a lawyer. She filed this with the court to protect you. You have dementia, Mrs. Hayes. For your safety, all phone calls must be monitored. I stared at her. They thought you had dementia. They had documents, medical reports, a psychiatrist's signature. Eleanor's voice shook with rage. All fake. I told them I didn't have dementia. I told them to call you, to call anyone. They smiled at me like I was a child and said, that's what people with dementia say, dear. They thought they were helping you, I whispered. They were following a court order, Eleanor said bitterly. A fraudulent one, and I couldn't prove it. Every month. Eleanor said, I'd check my account balance on the computer in the lab, and every month $4,000 or $5,000 was gone. $75,000 total, Rose said. Eleanor nodded. I started printing the statements, hiding them in my room. I didn't know what else to do. Why didn't you call the police? With what phone? Eleanor's laugh was harsh. Every call I made was monitored. Every visitor had to be approved by Victoria. And who would believe an 87-year-old woman in a nursing home over a lawyer with court documents? I said, my voice breaking. I know, sweetheart. That's why I kept the records. I knew someone would come eventually. I just didn't know it would take 18 months. Rose leaned forward. Eleanor, I need to ask. Are you willing to testify in court against Victoria? My mother's eyes went hard as stone. Absolutely. It won't be easy. Victoria's lawyer will try to discredit you. They'll say you're confused, that you don't understand. Let them try. Eleanor's voice was steel. I've been a prisoner for 18 months. I've watched my granddaughter steal from me, lie about me, and isolate me from my own daughter. I'll testify, and I'll make damn sure everyone knows exactly what she did. Rose smiled. Good, because we're going to need you. She pulled out a folder. Here's what we're going to do. Rose laid out the plan on my kitchen table the day I came home. August 20th. My hip still ached. I walked with a cane, but my mind was clear, and I was ready to fight. First, Rose said, spreading documents across the table, we need an independent medical evaluation of Eleanor. If we're going to prove the guardianship was fraudulent, we need a doctor to confirm she's cognitively intact. Who? I asked. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, geriatrician at OHSU. I've worked with her before. She's thorough, credible, and she doesn't play games. Rose made a call. Dr. Walsh agreed to see Eleanor on August 22nd. Second, Rose continued, we need to document everything. Bank records, phone logs, emails between Victoria and the Riverside staff. Every piece of evidence that shows pattern and intent. Robert Mitchell. My estate lawyer joined us that afternoon. He'd already started pulling records. I've got Catherine's accounts, he said, spreading printouts on the table, and I subpoenaed Eleanor's. Victoria withdrew $4,000 to $5,000 a month for 18 months, $75,000 total. Where did it go? I asked. Robert slid another sheet across the table. Transfers to Daniel Reeves, $60,000 over the past 2 years. I stared at the numbers. Victoria had stolen from my mother to fund her husband's failing business. We've got her, Rose said quietly, but we need more. There's one more thing, Rose said carefully. The security camera in your upstairs hallway, the one that's been there for years. You said it stopped working last year, right? I nodded. Victoria told me it was broken. She even offered to dispose of it for me. Rose's smile was grim. It's not broken, Catherine. It's been recording the whole time, motion activated. I had a tech specialist retrieve the footage remotely this morning. My breath caught. From August 15th. From August 15th. I felt something cold settle in my chest. We have video of her pushing me. We have video of everything, Rose corrected. Her forcing entry, the argument, the push, and her leaving through the back door while you lay at the bottom of the stairs. I closed my eyes. She's going to prison, Rose said, but we need to do this right, legally, no mistakes. On August 22nd, Dr. Walsh conducted a full geriatric evaluation of Eleanor. 2 hours of cognitive tests, memory assessments, problem-solving tasks, medical history review. The report came back the next day. Eleanor Hayes is a fully competent, cognitively intact, 87-year-old woman. She exhibits no signs of dementia, Alzheimer's disease, or cognitive impairment. Her decision-making capacity is unimpaired. The guardianship filed by Victoria Hayes appears to have been based on falsified medical documentation. Rose read it aloud, then looked at me. This is it, Catherine. This proves the guardianship was fraud. Over the next week, Rose and Robert built the case. Mrs. Sullivan provided a witness statement she'd heard the argument, heard me scream, seen Victoria's car speed away. The hospital provided my medical records severe hip contusion grade 2, ankle sprain injuries consistent with a fall downstairs. Riverside provided the guardianship documents complete with the forged psychiatrist's signature, and the security footage showed everything. On August 27th, Rose sat me down. Catherine, we have 2 options. We can go to the police right now, file charges, get an arrest warrant, or we set a trap. I looked at her. What kind of trap? You've been using the gray rock technique for a week. Victoria thinks you've given up. She thinks she's won. Rose leaned forward. Let's use that. Invite her to a meeting with Robert. Tell her you're ready to sign the new will. Get her in a room where she feels safe, and then we bring in Eleanor, the detectives, and all the evidence. You want her to confess. I want her to have no way out. Rose's voice was hard. If we arrest her at home, she'll lawyer up immediately. She'll claim you're lying, that Eleanor's confused, that the video is edited. But if we confront her in a controlled environment with witnesses with evidence she can't deny, she'll crack. I thought about Victoria standing at the top of my stairs, the cold look in her eyes, the threat, or this is just the beginning. Let's set the trap, I said. I went home on August 20th with a cane, a bottle of painkillers, and a plan. Rose had walked me through the gray rock technique on the ride back from the hospital. You become the most boring person in the world, she'd explained. No emotion, no reaction, just flat. Narcissists feed on drama. If you don't give it to them, they get sloppy. I'd spent 30 years giving Victoria everything. Now I would give her nothing. Not anger, not tears, not even the satisfaction of knowing she'd hurt me. The call came the next morning. Mom. Victoria's voice was syrupy sweet the way it always was when she wanted something. I just wanted to check on you. Are you feeling better? My hand tightened around the phone. Every instinct screamed to unleash 30 years of rage. Instead, I took a breath and made my voice as flat as a Midwest highway. I'm fine, Victoria. Good, good. A pause. Have you thought about what we discussed about the will she demanded while standing over me at the top of my stairs? You're right. I said each word careful and empty. I've been thinking about what you said. Silence on the other end. She'd expected a fight. You have... Yes. I kept my tone neutral, almost bored. I can't keep living like this. The fighting, the anger. I'm 62 years old and I'm tired. Mom, but I need something from you first. Her voice sharpened. What? A promise. From Daniel. I kept my voice steady, businesslike. If I change the will, if I give you everything I need to know, you'll both take care of me when I can't take care of myself. I need it in writing, a care agreement. Another pause. I could almost hear her calculating. Of course, Mom, she said finally, her voice syrupy again. Daniel and I will always take care of you. Your family. Good, then let's meet with Robert next week. Bring Daniel. We'll do this properly. I'm so glad you understand, Mom. This is what's best for everyone. Best for you, you mean. I love you, Mom. The line went dead. I set the phone down and looked at Rose, who'd been listening on speaker from across my kitchen table. Perfect, Rose said quietly. She bought it. She thinks I'm broken, I replied. That's exactly what we need her to think. Behind the scenes, Rose and Robert worked with people I wasn't allowed to know about yet. The less you know, the better, Rose had said. If Victoria asks you questions, you can't slip. What I did know, the meeting was set for September 1st, 2 p.m. Robert's office downtown, and Eleanor would be there, along with 2 detectives. On August 24th, Victoria texted, "Should I bring my own lawyer to the meeting?" My fingers hovered over the keyboard. This was the moment if she brought a lawyer, the whole plan could collapse. I typed carefully. No need, Robert will have a standard care agreement ready. Just you, me, Daniel, and Robert. Let's keep it family focused. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Okay, if you're sure. I'm sure. I just want this to be over. Her greed was stronger than her caution. She wanted this done fast before I changed my mind. On August 28th, another text. I'm proud of you, Mom. This is the right thing. I stared at those words for a long time, proud, as if I were a child who'd finally learned to behave. I didn't respond. On August 29th, I sent the final message. Meeting confirmed for September 1st at Robert's office, Southwest 5th Avenue. 2 p.m. Bring Daniel. We'll sign everything. Within 30 seconds, she replied. I wanted to throw up. Instead, I set down my phone, looked at Rose, and said, "It's done." Good, Rose said, her judge voice back in full force. September 1st, Victoria walks into that office thinking she's signing your life away. Instead, she's walking into a courtroom. September 1st was 2 days away. Victoria thought she was walking into a signing. She had no idea she was walking into a trap. For the first time in 30 years, I wasn't the one being played. If you're still here with me at this point, leave a number from 1 to 9 in the comments so I know you're still following this story. And if you were in my place, knowing the next meeting could change everything, would you stay silent to protect yourself or step forward and confront the truth, even if there's no turning back? Before we continue, one important note: the next part of this story includes some dramatized and fictional elements adjusted for storytelling purposes. If that's not something you wish to hear, you're welcome to stop the video here. I arrived at Robert's office 30 minutes early. The building sat on Southwest 5th Avenue in downtown Portland, all glass and steel, the kind of place where serious money changed hands. I took the elevator to the 9th floor, my cane tapping against the polished marble, my hips still aching with every step. Robert met me at the door. "You ready?" "No," I said honestly, "but let's do it anyway." He led me to the conference room, mahogany table, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. But this conference room had something most didn't: a second room, connected by a door with a one-way mirror. "Rose is in there now," Robert said quietly, "along with 2 Portland police detectives. They'll be listening, recording, waiting." I looked at the mirror, couldn't see through it, but I knew they were there. "All you have to do," Robert continued, "is get Victoria to talk, ask about Eleanor's money, get her to admit what she did. And if she doesn't, she will." Robert's voice was certain. Narcissists can't help themselves. They need to justify, to explain why they deserve it. I nodded, took my seat, back to the window, face to the door, and waited. At 2 o'clock, sharp Victoria and Daniel walked in. Victoria looked radiant hair, freshly blown out cream-colored blazer, that confident smile she wore when she thought she'd already won. Daniel trailed behind her in a suit that cost more than most people's rent, his hand possessively on her lower back. "Mom." Victoria crossed the room and kissed my cheek, her perfume too sweet, too strong. "You look so much better. I'm so glad we're doing this." Doing this, as if I had a choice. Victoria, Daniel. I kept my voice soft, a little shaky. The performance wasn't over yet. Robert gestured to the chairs across from me. "Please have a seat. Let's get started." Victoria settled in, folding her hands on the table like a businesswoman closing a deal. Daniel leaned back, one arm draped over her chair, his expression smug. Robert opened a leather folder and slid a document across the table. "This is the revised will," he said, his tone neutral and professional. "Mrs. Hayes has made the following changes. 95% of her estate will go to Victoria Hayes. 5% will cover estate administration and legal fees." Victoria's eyes scanned the page, then stopped. "Wait," she looked up. 95%. "Correct," Robert said. "The 5% covers probate costs, taxes, and filing fees. Standard practice." Victoria's face relaxed. She turned to me, her smile so bright it could have powered the city. "Oh, Mom, this is perfect, thank you." Daniel grinned, actually grinned, like he'd just won the lottery. Robert slid a second document across the table. "This is the care agreement Mrs. Hayes requested. In exchange for the revised will, Victoria Hayes and Daniel Reeves agree to provide housing, medical care, and financial support for Catherine Hayes for the remainder of her life." Victoria barely glanced at it. "Of course, we'll sign it." Daniel nodded, his expression still smug. They thought they'd won. I let the silence stretch, let them bask in their victory. Then I spoke, my voice still soft, still fragile. "Before we sign, I need to ask you something." Victoria's smile didn't falter. "Of course, anything." I lifted my eyes and met hers. "What about Grandma Eleanor's money?" The temperature in the room dropped. Victoria's hand slipped off the table. Her smile froze, then cracked at the edges. "What? Eleanor's money?" I repeated louder now. "The $75,000 you took from her accounts over 18 months, while you kept her at Riverside, while you told me she had dementia and I couldn't see her." Daniel's smirk vanished. Victoria's face went white, then red. She stood so fast her chair scraped backward. "That's..." Her voice shook. "That's not true. Grandma does have dementia. I was protecting her." "You isolated her," I said, my voice steady now, all pretense gone. "You forged a guardianship order. You submitted fake medical records. You told the staff she couldn't make phone calls. You lied to both of us. You don't have any proof." Victoria hissed, her mask finally slipping. "You're making this up because you're bitter and lonely and—" "You don't have proof!" she shouted, slamming her hand on the table. The sound echoed through the room. I didn't flinch. "Actually," I said quietly, "I do." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "What?" I glanced at Robert. He gave the smallest nod. And then the door to the adjoining room opened. Not the hallway door. The door Victoria hadn't noticed. The door with the one-way mirror. Eleanor walked in first. 87 years old, silver hair pinned back, standing straighter than I'd seen her in years. Behind her, Rose and 2 Portland police detectives in plain clothes, badges clipped to their belts. Victoria went white. Daniel froze mid-stand, hand gripping his chair. "Mom," my daughter's voice strangled. "What are you doing here? You're supposed to be at Riverside." Eleanor's tone cut like steel. "Locked away, told I have dementia." Victoria opened her mouth, closed it. "I don't have dementia." Eleanor stepped forward, placing a thick folder on the table. "I never did, and I have proof." She flipped it open. Bank statements, $75,000 withdrawn over 18 months while you held my power of attorney. She slid out another page. Doctor. Walsh's evaluation from OHSU, fully competent, no cognitive decline. Fraudulent guardianship order you filed with forged medical records. Another document. Phone logs showing every blocked call. Emails to Riverside staff restricting my contact. Victoria shook her head violently. "You signed the POA, you agreed. For emergencies." Eleanor's eyes blazed. "Not to drain my accounts while holding me prisoner." Rose stepped forward, voice calm and judicial. "Financial records show $60,000 transferred from your account to Daniel over 2 years, matching Eleanor's withdrawal timeline." She pulled out a tablet and pressed play. My upstairs hallway appeared on screen. The security camera I'd thought was broken. August 15th, 6:30 p.m. "You're signing that will, Mom, tonight." "Victoria, please." Hands shoving. My body tumbling down the stairs. The sickening thud. Silence. Victoria stared at the screen, face frozen. "The hallway camera you told your mother was broken." Rose's voice was quiet. Motion activated. It captured everything. One of the detectives stepped forward, tall, gray-haired expression unreadable. "Victoria Hayes, Daniel Reeves, you're both under arrest." Victoria's head snapped up. "No. Assault in the second-degree elder, financial exploitation, fraud, forgery of court documents, and theft in the first degree." He turned to Daniel. "Conspiracy and criminal possession of stolen property." "Mom, please." She lunged toward me. The second detective blocked her. "Tell them this is a mistake." Then she whirled on Daniel. "It wasn't me, he made me do it. He needed the money." "Shut up, Victoria." Daniel's hiss came too late. Handcuffs clicked around her wrists, around his. Eleanor moved closer, voice trembling with controlled rage. "We loved you. Catherine gave you everything. I would have given you everything." She paused. "And you repaid us with cruelty, lies, and theft." Tears filled Victoria's eyes, not remorse, rage. "You don't understand." Her whisper was venomous. "You owe me. I'm your daughter, your granddaughter. Everything you have should be mine." Eleanor's face hardened. "You're right, I don't understand." The detectives led them toward the door. Daniel silent, head down. At the threshold, Victoria twisted back, locking eyes with me. No apology, no regret. 4 words cold and final. "You'll never escape me, Mom." Then she was gone. On September 2nd, Victoria and Daniel stood before a judge for arraignment. Bail was set at $150,000 each. Victoria made bail within 48 hours, friends I assumed, or maybe money she'd hidden away that we hadn't found yet. Daniel stayed in jail. No one came forward to help him. I didn't go to the arraignment. Rose went on my behalf and called me afterward. "She looked smaller," Rose said quietly, "without the designer clothes and the confidence. Just smaller." I didn't know what to say to that. The legal process stretched from September through December. Victoria's lawyer tried to frame the whole thing as a family dispute, pushing for reduced charges, hoping for probation and restitution instead of prison time. The Multnomah County District Attorney wasn't having it. "The evidence is overwhelming," the DA told me during one of our meetings. Bank records, medical evaluations, video footage, witness testimony. This isn't a dispute. This is a pattern of exploitation, manipulation, and violence. So we went to trial. Eleanor testified first. I sat in the gallery and watched my mother, 87 years old, wearing a navy dress, and her pearls speak clearly and calmly about 18 months of captivity, about watching her savings disappear, about being told she had dementia when her mind was sharp as ever. The jury was silent. Mrs. Sullivan testified next, describing the night of August 15th. The scream, the thud, the sight of me crumpled at the bottom of the stairs while Victoria disappeared out the back door. Dr. Walsh took the stand and walked the jury through Eleanor's cognitive evaluation, explaining in precise medical terms that my mother had no dementia, no impairment, no reason to be isolated from her family. And then it was my turn. I told them about 30 years of sacrifice, about the life insurance money, the BMW, the college tuition, the wedding, about the will, the pressure, the phone calls, the manipulation, about the stairs. Victoria's lawyer tried to paint me as a bitter, controlling mother who couldn't let go, who wanted to punish her daughter for living her own life. But the doorbell camera footage didn't lie, and neither did the bank records showing $75,000 drained from Eleanor's account, or the transfers showing $60,000 going to Daniel. On December 15th, the plea deal was rejected. The trial moved forward. On January 10th, the jury delivered their verdict, guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Victoria to 4 to 7 years at Coffee Creek Correctional Facility, Oregon's women's prison. Restitution $75,000 to Eleanor Hayes. A lifetime restraining order. Victoria was forbidden from contacting me, Eleanor, or Rose ever again. And because Victoria had been a licensed attorney, something I'd paid for something I'd been proud of once the Oregon State Bar disbarred her. Permanently. Daniel received 3 years for conspiracy and possession of stolen property, plus $60,000 in restitution. In February, Daniel filed for divorce. By April, it was finalized. Victoria never apologized. Not in court, not in any statement, not once. I didn't lose my daughter in September. I lost her years ago every time I said yes when I should have said no. Every time I gave in when I should have held firm. Every time I prioritized her happiness over my own boundaries. I'd been grieving her for years without realizing it. The trial just made it official. 10 months after Victoria pushed me down the stairs, my life looked nothing like I'd imagined. But for the first time in decades, I felt free. Free from the phone calls, free from the guilt, free from the constant gnawing fear that I wasn't doing enough, giving enough, being enough. I wasn't the mother I'd tried to be for 30 years, but maybe that mother had never existed in the first place. And maybe, just maybe, that was okay. 10 months after Victoria pushed me, I woke up in a new house in the Hawthorne district. The townhouse was smaller than my Pearl District condo, 2 bedrooms, a narrow kitchen, a front porch just wide enough for 2 chairs. But it was ours, mine and Eleanor's. We'd sold the condo in March. Too many memories trapped in those walls, too many arguments, too many phone calls, too much silence after the fall. Hawthorne felt different, quieter, kinder. Eleanor had the downstairs bedroom. I took the one upstairs where morning light streamed through east-facing windows, and I could hear birds instead of traffic. For the first time in 30 years, I wasn't living alone. And for the first time in her 87 years, neither was my mother. I'd revised my will in February. The 50% I'd once earmarked for Victoria, the money she'd tried to steal. The inheritance she'd pushed me down the stairs for went to the 3 charities I'd originally chosen: children's education, the women's shelter, and animal rescue. But I added something new, the Eleanor Hayes Second Bloom Fund. Eleanor's estate, the $75,000 in restitution we'd recovered, plus the $80,000 she'd saved over a lifetime of careful budgeting, would go into a fund to support elderly victims of financial abuse, legal aid, emergency housing, advocacy. I want something good to come from this, Eleanor had said when we met with Robert to finalize the paperwork. I want other families to have a chance we almost didn't get. So we built it together. 2 mornings a week, I volunteer at the women's shelter downtown. I teach life skills classes, budgeting, resume writing, how to spot financial manipulation. The women in my classes are younger than me, but their stories aren't so different from mine. They gave everything to someone who took and took and took. They're learning, like I did, that love without boundaries isn't love. It's self-destruction. Eleanor spends her afternoons at the Hawthorne Senior Center teaching quilting and knitting to a circle of women who call themselves the Rebel Grannies. Last week, they made blankets for the homeless shelter. This week, they're organizing a protest against predatory reverse mortgages. My mother is unstoppable. I think about Victoria every day. I wonder if she thinks about me, if she regrets what she did, if prison has changed her, or if she still believes deep down that she was entitled to everything I had. I don't hate her. I pity her. She had everything love, education opportunity, and she destroyed it all for money she didn't really need. She'll be released in 3 to 6 years, depending on parole. When that day comes, the restraining order will still stand. She won't be allowed to contact me, Eleanor, or Rose. I hope by then she'll have found some kind of peace. But I'm not waiting for her to find it before I find mine. On a warm July evening, Eleanor and I sat on the front porch with glasses of iced tea, watching the neighborhood kids ride their bikes up and down the street. Do you ever wonder what she's thinking? Eleanor asked quietly. In that cell. Every day, I admitted. But I don't wonder if I made the right choice. I know I did. Eleanor reached over and squeezed my hand. Her grip was still strong. You saved my life, you know. I shook my head. No, Mom, we saved each other. She smiled a real smile, the kind I hadn't seen in years. We sat there as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. A screen door slammed. A child laughed. Normal sounds, safe sounds. Sounds I'd taken for granted for 30 years. Some families are born. Some families are built. And some families are rebuilt after they've been broken. Eleanor and I. We're the third kind, and we're stronger than we've ever been. If you're watching this and recognizing yourself in my story, whether you're the parent who gives too much or the child who's learned to take, please don't be like I was. I spent 30 years confusing love with surrender. I thought sacrifice without boundaries was devotion. It wasn't. It was destruction of myself, of my mother Eleanor, and ultimately of Victoria. Family drama stories like ours don't happen overnight. They build slowly, one yes at a time, one boundary crossed at a time. Grandma stories like Eleanor's 18 months of captivity, 75,000 stolen happen because families stop communicating and start enabling. The Bible says, train up a child in the way they should go. I trained Victoria to believe she was entitled to everything. That was my failure. And by God's grace, I'm learning to forgive myself for it. These family drama stories teach us love must have limits. Grandma stories teach us silence protects abusers. And the most painful family drama stories and grandma stories remind us it's never too late to choose yourself. So speak up, set boundaries, choose yourself. It's never selfish, it's survival. Final note. This story contains dramatized storytelling for educational purposes. Some details are fictionalized, but the lessons and message are entirely real. If this style isn't for you, that's okay. Please seek content better suited to your needs.